centering Japanese experiences. This has been the conversation over the weekend with the Oppenheimer film coming out, and I wanted to chip in something, and that's that the Japanese army, the Imperial Japanese Army in World War II, practiced cannibalism on a widespread scale, systematically, in an organized fashion, and not always when they're starving. And this is basically a practice of the Japanese army, like a pretty much an official practice in World War II is cannibalism, and this information was suppressed. Okay, after the war, they suppressed this because it was found so upsetting to people. Like if your family member was eaten or might have been eaten, so they suppressed this information. Okay, did you know that? And this has been getting more press in the last like decade because more people are investigating this, and the facts are there to be uncovered. It was suppressed. It wasn't that suppressed, and I'm not just trying to dig up old stuff to rip on Japan. It should just maybe be brought up when if people are going to go on about like the U.S. being like bad in World War II. Like they're trying to say that Japan is a victim in some way. Okay, but Japan did not think of themselves in those terms at the time. And the mentality that people have now is not the same as what the Imperial Japanese Army had, because they didn't really care if a Western leftist thought that they were doing the right thing. And they didn't care if, say, a Chinese or a Korean thought they were a good guy or the good guys. They didn't care. And this isn't the kind of terms that they thought of, and they cared more about having a martial spirit to dominate the people who they conquered by eating them and so forth. I'm focusing on just not all Japanese war crimes or something like comfort women or so. Like I just not a lot of people have heard of the cannibalism aspect of it because it was suppressed, and people do know different incidents. Usually, when you bring up this topic of the Japanese eating people in World War II, they're thinking of like isolated incidents with starving Japanese soldiers on different islands, or like or Chichijima. And a lot of people think of Chichijima because a president almost got eaten. And George H.W. Bush was, he was a torpedo bomber, and it got shot down, and the people who got captured were eaten. So he was almost eaten. So it's a famous incident, but this happened a lot. It wasn't an isolated incident. And Japanese officers like to eat people, or this would encourage your martial spirit, or they would teach their men to eat people, and they would eat like locals on the islands that they would go to. They would eat Australians. They would eat the Papuans and the Melanesians. They would eat different kind of POWs, Allied airmen, like Brits, Americans, Dutch, and so forth. And they would eat Indian POWs. Especially for whatever reason, they would eat Indian POWs that like the ones that didn't go for like the Chandra Bose army or whatever. They they would eat quite a few Indians even as like a food stock, where they're like shipping like Indian. They'd like ship Indians to like to eat, and they'd be like your food ration, and they would kill like one at a time. Like they'd kill like an Indian POW a day. Japanese soldiers kill like an Indian POW a day to eat, and some of these guys are still alive at the end of the war, like alive as like a food stock in like Japan, and they were gonna be eaten, and they were being eaten. Indian POWs. So this is suppressed. This is maybe I don't mean to just bash on Japan because we have a good relationship now, maybe in part because stuff like this is suppressed. But so I'm not trying to rip on Japan, but if it's a little rich if people are gonna make this about the U.S. being the bad guy when Japan at the time didn't, they certainly didn't care about like who's the good guy or the bad guy or so forth. Japan, the Japanese Southern strategy had they just put their guys, their army all across the Pacific Ocean on different islands. And they didn't have the most efficient convoy system to feed these guys. So the idea was like they would just scrounge and steal and loot and take whatever, and they'd cannibalize people. So they would eat just locals on the islands or wherever they were at. They'd eat people, and there were rules against eating fellow Japanese soldiers, but these rules were like they were like the speed limits or something, because they would. And in fact, the situation on a lot of these islands, as the U.S. began to, especially to bypass islands where the Japanese army was occupying, um, these guys would starve. So like a million or so Japanese soldiers, the Imperial Japanese army would starve. They would start or die of disease and so forth. So the situation on a lot of these islands became one where the soldiers would be trying to eat other guys. They'd try to take and eat other guys from different units and so forth. So you'd be almost more scared. You're not going to get the bonsai charge or something. You're just sitting on an island starving. That's the situation it became with a lot of these guys. But other than that, they would, when they'd take over a place, a lot of times they would just kill people, like to show like they're like the conqueror. They have a right to do it. They beat you, they eat you. And so it was considered something that would help their martial spirit, just eating people. Or that's why they would eat different uh like pilots and so forth and stuff like that. They would they had whole processes about doing it. I don't need if I don't know if I need to get into the whole like lurid process on how they would like what errors they would skin, the condition they found people in after eating, but it was somewhat systematic, and they had certain practices that they did quite a bit, and maybe better than they figured it was better than eating worms or whatever. But that's what we're dealing with. So now it's it's just a little rich, isn't it? If you want to go for it, especially after Pearl Harbor and so forth, that we're we're the bad guys and the warmongers and so forth. I mean, with even with the Pacific War and War, dude. Like, come on. But I don't. Like I said, I don't mean to rip on Japan or say Japan should just keep feeling bad about this or something. Uh, you know, I just think it's a little rich that it's gonna come. If people are gonna bash our side, I'm not trying. I think it's interesting that 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 this stuff happened. It's interesting that this was suppressed as well. Uh, but yeah, I thought you might think that's interesting as well. If you hadn't heard of that, most people haven't really heard that much about this. So you could look into it. There's more and more info and investigations being done into this, especially in the past decade. There've been more stuff written on this because they would eat people. The Imperial Japanese Army would eat people. I'm not. This isn't. I'm not trying to make a big moral condemnation of it because it's not really how they thought at the time, and we already dealt with the issue. But if you want to just keep on hashing over the stuff, maybe we need to revisit why we made the decisions that we did, or why our people came to the conclusions that they reached at the time, why they thought they did at the time. So maybe this had something to do with it. If not, I mean, it is interesting, isn't it? I think so. But anyway,